Hey guys, this is Cruiseroy. This is about the battery mod on the MAVIC Pro. I want to start by showing you this is a UAV mod, clip mod. Okay, the reason for the clip mod is it doesn't affect your warranty or anything, even though DJI can see the voltage you're putting through this bird and the runtime. They can kind of figure it out, but at least this isn't affecting your battery, or it's not affecting the inside of your MAVIC Pro. I'm going to try to do a clone copy, something a little different, maybe just the clips and some wires, but what I'm going to show you is the process of trying to go through with this, and I don't even know if it's going to work. This is you watching me for the first time trying to make these little slits, which I know that they're probably using a small CNC machine. I know the brass is K&S, and they probably use a CNC machine to make it narrower because you can only find it 1/4 inch, and it's about 3/16 wide. So you got to kind of make it a little smaller, and then you got to do the two slits in the proper location, and they got to be lined up just right, the same distance apart to fit on the clips. So this has got a double XT60 plugs, K&S brass. They used a nice big piece of shrink wrap. They put an LED in there to show that it's making a complete contact, which you can get the juice either from the battery or back and forth, so I'm not sure if that's a real if that really tells you exactly if you got a good connection, but they did it. It's a nice job. You know, some kind of midshift plastic here that they just kind of put over the ends to protect it. I'm going to try to do something a little bit different, and you can watch and see if I get it correct or if it actually works. So what I did is I got a few pieces of K&S brass hanging around again. The thinnest you can get is the better, because it'll fit under the hood of the battery. I'll show you the code there if you want to look it up. I don't have my micrometer with me right at the moment. I just got an XT connector with some length of wire already attached to it. Over here I got miscellaneous heat tape, tape measure. I got, if it all works out, I have the solder here. I have a few things to try to make some marks. You can either use a scratch awl for metal, magic marker, Sharpie, or one of these push pencils are always nice with the little piece of lead in there. You can kind of get into a small area to make some marks. Also, of course, the Dremel with a drum sander and some snips to make it narrow. And of course, what I think they're doing is they're using a CNC bit. I'll just roll it past so you can see. Hopefully it focuses in. There you can see the model number and the size. They're only a couple of bucks, but they're actually meant for, they're an end mill. And look at the size of that, alright? So if I bring over the clip again, you'll notice that it just fits right inside. I think it's 0.40. So it's a little loose, but when you cut, of course, if you don't have a steady hand, if you got a CNC machine, you can make a perfect cut. And these are critical that they have to be spaced properly, and then the spacing between them, and also the thickness. K&S comes 1/4 inch. This is 3/16, so I'm going to be cutting it down and everything, but let me just poke that right there. So let's get to it. See if I can actually do this. Some people are taking a diamond wheel and just slitting it, and then they're just brazing a piece or some solder right across, but you got to make it real thin, otherwise it'll push up on the battery. You know, that's the whole thing about the thickness. So it works, people have been doing it, but let's try this and see what happens. Alright, so the first thing is the brass. It's way too big on the width, so I gotta narrow it down. Now I can either grind it or cut it or whatever. I'm gonna try to cut it. You can usually use a razor knife with this stuff, and if you cut through it enough times, it'll make a nice perfect cut. I'm gonna just try the snips, but what I want to do is, hopefully you can see this, I'm gonna use the UAV clip as a template, and of course I have a really brand new Sharpie, so it left a mark, but you can kind of get the idea that I really pretty much need to take off the thickness of the marker. Now I can clean that up later, but I'm gonna need 2 of these. But now, how long do we want it? You can do what they did with all the bends. Grab your trusty tape measure and measure length or whatever. But what I'm going to do is a 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch down, 1/4 inch over. Alright, so that works out to be 1 1/4 inches. So that'll give me enough to solder the wires onto it. So about 1 1/4 inches is what I'm going to do for mine. Alright. And for bending it and everything, you just use nice needle nose pliers and you can get it to bend properly for your bends. So I'm going to use the snips. I don't know if I'm able to get it in the screen here, but all we're doing is taking just enough off. Like I said, you can either use a knife. I think the guys who are making them, they're using a nice little mini CNC machine, and it gives you a nice perfect cut. And you can also buy K&S metals as a sheet. Alright, I cut it, worked out as a little taper, but I can clean it up after. So I think I'm going to leave this long so I can kind of have something to hold on to. But let me clean up the edges with the drums. That's what all this little mini drum sander is. Alright, all you want to do is round this end. Maybe clean it up a little bit from the burrs. Alright, so that gives us our end. And like I said, they're probably using a CNC machine and it works out perfect. But we're trying to do it with what we got. So, and even if this was too thin, at least I can move it down because I tape it a little bit. So next thing, the hardest part of all, is making these little slits on the end. So I figured I could just lay the mod clip over and take this really sharp pencil and make my marks. Just keep rubbing back and forth to leave some lead behind. So it left some behind. It's not too forgiving. There's not much metal there. I probably ground down a little bit too much. A little bit too skinny, but it's close. So there's my 2 marks. And if you don't think it's dark enough, just do it again. But like I said, use a CNC machine like for this. You get some really, really, really nice clean cuts. Oop, blowing away all my tape. Alright, so I got it cut. I got a couple of little marks there. Now, I have a piece of styrofoam here, which I forgot to mention. So now what I need to do is I need to put this in the Dremel, this end mill, which should be in a CNC machine. It's meant to plunge and drag. I need to see how steady my hands are. Put it in as deep as you can so you don't get vibration from the shaft. If it's sticking out too far, it'll if the bit sticks out too far, it'll do what they call, I forgot what they call it, but waving. So your cut won't be as tiny as that. It'll be a little bit bigger. So hopefully you can see this. I'm going to try to make a cut and drag it. I'm going to start at a medium RPM. First I need to plunge. Alright, so I plunged the hole. I need to make a straight line. Alright, as you notice, I went off course and sliced it right out. So, that wasn't a very good test at all. So the end mill thing does cuts like butter, but it can go all over the place unless you have a steady hand. So as a test on this piece, I'm going to bring in this little flat stock here. I'm going to see if I can make a hole. Like I said, I think they're using a CNC machine, but I'm not quite sure. I'm going to hold pressure on this, do a plunge and a slice, and try to follow Well, that didn't work too well. By using the harder metal next to it as a guide, I just broke the end mill. So our testing is over for trying to do it with the end mill. Maybe we'll try the slice and see how that works. So I tried, I failed. Let's try something else. Let me get set up and I'll be right back. Okay guys, this is Cruz Roy for the second attempt on trying to make the slits for the UAV mod battery clip, or you can make your own. Most of the clips I've ever made can plug in. These have to go over little tabs on the MAVIC Pro. So this time, with the brass, the end mill thing failed, it snapped, but if you had a CNC machine with complete accuracy and not old shaky fingers, it probably would have worked mint. So if you have a little CNC machine, you can actually do this. What I'm going to try now is with a .40 Dremel cutting wheel and make the slits and the solder to see how that works. You only need 1/4 inch slits, but you need another 1/8 inch for soldering. Alright, so we're going to try that style and we'll see how it goes. So it's either going to work or I'm going to cut my finger. Again, high speed's usually better with this wheel, so we're going to wind it up a little bit to maybe 3/4. See what happens. See how steady my hand is. Oh, this time I made a couple of little marks with the MAVIC marker. Okay, the metal gets a little hot with this wheel. Let it cool down a little bit. Looks like I got plenty there. Let me just check it with Alright, looks like it's going well and it's straight. Let me try another one. What's hard is I can't get, I probably should have like a little block higher, but we'll try it. Now 3/4 RPM. Like I said, touching this gets very, very hot. Alright. So this is what I got. Let me go into focus here. So a little quicker than the end mill. Still takes a steady hand. And let me set up solder. But I'm going to try to attempt to solder. Let me get something up here that I can rest on and try to solder these tabs together. I don't think anybody's putting a little piece of brass there because you don't want it too thick. But let's see what we can do. Let me set up and I'll be back in a minute. Okay guys, Cruz Roy, I'm back. I don't know if you guys ever seen one of these, but it's a portable soldering gun. Works off of butane, and boy, it gets hot. I'll show you a little quick thing here. Alright, so instantly it's red hot. So you gotta be careful with these. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is try to do that soldering attempt. across the tabs. Now I'm not sure if I should put some kind of layer here, but I think it's just going to flow. And let me just turn this down, set it on the table. I would first recommend you cleaning. I'm not going to round it off yet, I'm just going to clean it. This is flux core solder, so it should bind, and this is brass. But I don't know how you prevent it going into the slots, you know what I mean? So let's see what happens. People are doing it, I'm just not seeing any videos, and that's why I'm creating this video, to see how we can get it to work simply. Alright, let me get some solder here. Like I said, I'm going to try it, and hopefully it doesn't flow into the slots that we already made. I guess if you flux the tips, the solder should only, if you're using a non-flux core, but this is a flux core solder. So I'm trying to get both areas, and maybe I'll put the soldering gun ahead of it so it doesn't Alright, so it's kind of tinning. I mean, solder's soft, so if you need to cut it out, probably just do it. I'm trying just to go across the tip. Knock off the excess there. I don't know if I really need to do the other side, but I probably will. That seemed to go a little easier because the brass was already pretty hot. So that's what it's looking like there, but I did fill these spots, so maybe it's a better idea to go a little bit deeper and then solder it and then leave behind what you need. You only need so much for the tabs anyways. But let me see what I can do here. Shut the soldering iron off. And let me move this out of the way. Okay, what I'm going to do is file clean it right now. Drum sander on slow. Solder seems to be harder than the brass. Hopefully this is focused for you guys. This camera doesn't really have an autofocus. Now I wish I had the end mill. I'd clean up that excess solder. Okay, so I hope that's focusing in on you. This is what I got. And there's the slots you need. I'm a little bit small, but the idea worked. So what I need to do next time is go a lot deeper with the cut and then solder it. But the idea did work. I just need bigger slots. So let me take care of that, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, this is Cruiser again. I recut it with the diamond wheel, made new marks, made it a little bit longer so I could have the perfect size tabs to match up with the adapter that I'm copying. Shouldn't say copy, I'm making my own. So now what I need to do is I did a slight Z bend just so my bends are ready, but I need to cut it about here. I'm going to grind it, and I'm going to put my XT adapter, solder it right to it. And then the reason I did a light Z bend is so I can get some shrinkable tape over it, some heat tape, you know. So let's give it a whirl. But that's what I ended up with. So what I need to do first is I don't need much here because I'm going to run wire. I'm not going to use the adapter direct. So I'm going to snip it right about here. I'm going to take the Dremel wheel and just smooth out the edges here so they're not so sharp. And take off any burrs. And I'm just going to grind this area here. Just that one side so I can solder the wire to it. Alright, that looks good. Alright, so now I'm going to solder. I took my XT adapter, stripped the wire, so I'll tin it first and then bond it to this little Z-bend I got going on here, and then let it cool and put some heat tape on it. Let me put my little soldering base up here. So first I'm going to solder the wire. I'm going to tin the wire. I'm trying to do this all close up. I gotta say, these little butane soldering irons, they get hot fast. And then watch the little port, because that's blowing out hot gas, and it gets hot, burns your fingers. So it's not quite like a regular soldering iron. It's actually blowing a flame out of there. Okay, so for my next trick, there's my positive lead for my adapter, and this is flux core, but I'm going to put a little bit sorry, on the end of the brass right here. Tin the brass a little bit, but this is a flux core solder, so I don't need to put any flux. It doesn't hurt to put it if you have it. Alright, now, hopefully like magic, and I need to hold try it again. I'm trying to hold it in position I need because it's very, very hot. See what I mean about this little thing blowing out heat? Okay, let's let it cool for a little bit. So this is what I got. I'll let that cool to put some tape on here, because the last thing you want is the lipos to be touching. But we'll let it cool down a little bit. I have some red heat tape. Okay, it should be cool enough. See, the reason I didn't bend it all the way was so I could get it over. Now I'm leaving it a little bit on the brass, a little bit on the wire. But you gotta be careful, you gotta be a little bit up to that Z bend, because that's the part that's gonna come out of the MAVIC. So you don't want too much of it there, it'll bind up on the MAVIC battery door. Alright, here's the other nice thing about this soldering iron with the little blue torch coming out of there. Is just aim it at your shrink tape. So it actually works two ways. Alright, so like I said, I did a light Z bend here. So let's finish it off. It's nicer to have a square tipped needle nose. Find my other bend here. Works out to be a ½ inch, a fat ½ inch for the bend. Alright. Here's the clip mod, and here's the wire clip mod. Put it down here so you can see it. Alright. So that's another way you can do it. I'm sorry that the end mill didn't work. If I had a CNC machine, it could make some perfect ends here. Alright. So I'm going to make the negative side of this and then do a test. And what I might do is heat tape the black and then maybe put a bigger one to cover both so they don't accidentally touch each other. But you should never have the battery connected to this when you're moving or not moving. The thing nice about this is they stay even. They're not going to move on you, but they could actually touch. This one here is a little bit more flexible, so you put them on, take them off. Alright, so I'll finish it up and I'll shoot you a video of how it looks, and then we'll do a test. Okay guys, this is Cruise Roy at the end. Alright, using the diamond wheel instead of the end mill. So all you need is some solder, some cheap XT connectors with some wires on them, or just the XT connectors, some K&S brass, some shrink wrap, and a Dremel, pair of pliers, some cutters, solder, and a lot of patience. So the next thing I gotta do is test the single adapter against this adapter. And as always, watch out for connections, especially with LiPo batteries. You touch this and you can cause an explosion on a LiPo battery, or just cause it to fail and the LiPo won't be any good anymore. So be safe and tinker all you want. And this is Cruise Roy, and I'm out of here.